Hans Holbein the Younger had a passion for visual puns and symbols. This is something that he probably picked up from his father, Hans Holbein the Elder. In 1502, Hans the Elder painted his 5-year-old son, Hans the Younger, in a basilica painting that shows in its left-hand panel a miracle from the Gospel of John in which a small boy presents Jesus with 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread that the Messiah then shares with 5,000 followers. Hans is placed near the center, and just above his head, the hands of Jesus and St. Peter meet, forming the shape of a heart. While the other characters from this scene are in biblical robes, the little boy wears contemporary dress with a red tunic and with a toolbox, rosary, and cloth attached to his belt. Later, in 1504, Hans the Elder hid his family portrait in plain sight by inserting himself with his 2 sons to witness St. Paul's baptism in the Basilica of St. Paolo Fiori della Mura. In this painting, 7-year-old Hans the Younger is tenderly embraced by his elder brother, Ambrosius, while Hans the Elder points at his youngest son with pride. It's experiences such as these that probably inspired Hans the Younger to add little details of his own, either for added effect or for personal amusement. For personal amusement, I am specifically thinking of playing cards. Once the miniature was painted and secured in its handheld frame, no one would ever see or know what card that the portrait was painted on, except for Hans himself. When painting on the backs of playing cards, clubs symbolized business, diamonds symbolized wealth, the ace being reserved for royalty, hearts symbolized affection, and spades symbolized serious stuff such as military rank. Jane was the wife of a prosperous London cloth merchant, Nicholas Small, and they were close neighbors of Holbein. Looking at her collar and cuffs, she is wearing blackwork embroidery. However, due to the acts of apparel, only the wives of barons' sons, or of knights, or any station above this status, such as a duchess or countess, were allowed to wear embroidery with silk. Therefore, Jane's embroidery, as the wife of a merchant, was most likely done in black wool. When looking closely at the details in a portrait, it's these added details that Holbein used to help tell us a story, to help explain more about the person in the portrait. The person may be wearing something particular to their station or holding something symbolic. For example, red carnations were symbols of betrothals or of courtship. Certain animals, such as white rabbits, were used as a symbol of fertility. The clothing details definitely provide insight into a person's station. In the 1509 Act against wearing of costly apparel, only the king and his immediate family, the queen, the king's mother, the king's brothers and sisters, could wear cloth of purple silk or gold, while dukes and marquises could use only cloth of gold woven into their coats and doublets. An earl and above could wear sable fur. A lord or a knight of the garter was allowed to wear imported wool. Anyone lower in standing than government servants were not allowed velvet, satin, or damask, unless, of course, he was a lord's son or a gentleman having lands that yield more than £100 per year. Holbein used the spade for Cromwell due to his frank demeanor. This portrait of a lady was recorded in the 18th and 19th centuries as being Catherine Howard, the 5th wife of Henry VIII. But with Holbein's passion for symbols and puns, consider the 4 of diamonds, which was on the back of this portrait. What if that was a reference to Henry's 4th wife, Anne of Cleves? One painting that is full of symbols is Holbein's painting of The Ambassadors. It was painted in 1533. This was the year that Henry VIII separated from the Catholic Church, making him head of the Church of England. This same year was the year he married Anne Boleyn, and his second daughter, Elizabeth, was born. There was a lot of upheaval in England during this time, with supporters of Catherine of Aragon, Henry's first wife, versus supporters of Anne, his second wife. There was the issue of religious practices of Catholics versus Protestants. The French ambassador, pictured on the left, wrote to his family that year stating, "I am the most melancholy, wary, and wearisome ambassador in the world." The objects on the upper shelf, a celestial globe, a sundial, and various other instruments used in astronomy and for measuring time, relate to the heavenly realm. The terrestrial globe, compass, lute, case of flutes, and open hymn book on the bottom shelf indicate earthly pursuits. The upright bend flank the two-tiered structure, linking them to both realms. Within this order, Holbein creates conflict. Each of the instruments on the upper shelf are misaligned for use in a northern latitude. Their misalignment is an emblem of chaos. The heavens are out of whack. On the bottom shelf, the terrestrial globe mirrors the celestial one above it, and the words Paris and Britannia, it's Holbein's own phonetic spellings of Paris and Brittany, can be made out. Peter Appian's new and reliable instruction book of calculation for merchants provides subtext beneath it. A ruler opens the textbook to a page of equations starting with the word divider, meaning let division be made, a clear reference to the religious schism tearing Europe apart. In another literal move, the lute's broken string symbolizes ecclesial discord. The book next to this one, a Lutheran hymnal, proffers Veni Sancte Spiritus, a hymn to the Holy Spirit, traditionally invoked as a force for church unification. As the picture shows, there are other larger powers at work, death and God's ultimate salvation. In the top left corner is a crucifix, and one cannot miss the large skull at the bottom of the portrait. This is a particularly near optical illusion, as you must view the portrait from the side for the grinning face of death to appear as a normally shaped skull. The tactile renderings of fur, silk, wood, and metal draw the viewer's eye to the material presence of the painting, aligning it with reality, rather than religion or allegory. Denteville appears as a man of action, clutching a dagger, while Decel rests his arm on a book, suggesting his contemplative nature. Both the dagger and the book are inscribed in Latin with their ages 29 and 25. Derek Bourne's cheekbones were not always so sharp. New research and conservation work on the 1533 portrait by Hans Holbein the Younger revealed that the painter made repeated small changes, each time giving Bourne even more chiseled features. X-radiography revealed that the portrait of Lady Guilford was painted on top of another painting, a fragment of a full-length portrait of a man. In 2024, prior to conservation, the portrait of Anne of Cleves had a comparatively muted appearance. Its background looked more green than blue, and the rich red of Anne's gown had faded to a dull reddish brown. Now, this stunning work allows us to see how vibrant and colorful the mid-16th century really was. Originally thought to be of a goldsmith called Hans of Antwerp, this portrait first came into royal possession in 1639 during the reign of Charles I. However, around 2012, removal of overpaint and dark varnish had proved that although the sitter may have been called Hans, he was actually a merchant. The careful cleaning work had exposed the gem settings on the rings worn by Hans, which also indicated the superior wealth of a leading merchant. Infrared images showed the artist's original underdrawing for the first time, and the conservators found that Holbein had made several changes to the portrait, reducing the size of the merchant's hat and lowering the position of his left shoulder and arm. Thank you for checking out my YouTube channel. If you enjoyed this video, please select thumbs up that you like the video. It helps with the algorithm. If you have any questions or comments, please post them below. And please click subscribe and ring the bell to be updated when new videos come out.